the sun's out, and hopefully it'll stay out, because in a week's time we'll both be off to the Costa del Scarborough for Books by the Beach. First though, we've got a couple more episodes to do. Here's number 11.
This is Partners in Crime with Adam Croft and Robert Dawes.
And some sad news this week, wasn't there, Bob?
Yes, 2 words. Stephen and Bochco, the legendary television producer, passed away at the age of 73 this week. Arguably one of the most influential producers of television drama of the last 50 years. Best known, of course, for his Hill Street Blues, a seminal work, his first major success, and also followed by L.A. Law, a favourite of mine, Doogie Howser, and one of the greatest cop shows of all time, NYPD Blue. But it was Hill Street Blues that I first got to know the name of Steve Bochco. The opening lines of every episode: armed robbery in progress, seized surplus store corner of People's Drive and 124th Street. I mean, those words stay with certainly my generation. I mean, and what was so special about Hill Street Blues? I mean, it really was groundbreaking. He, Stephen Bochco and Michael Kozol came up with the idea. Set in a nameless Rust Belt city, it was seen by Bochco as a mix of intensely powerful melodrama and slapstick farcical clowning. It broke ground in the size of its ensemble cast, which was based firmly on a family structure. Michael Conrad, playing Sergeant Phil Esterhaus, was the grandparent over the precinct, giving the guys in blue and women in blue their morning instructions. Captain Frank Ferrillo, Daniel De Travanti, was the father, and the prosecutor Joyce Davenport, Veronica Hemmel, the mother of the group of unruly children. I mean, it was the sheer multiplicity of personal storylines that meant that each episode was open-ended, and the beauty of the writing was that audiences cared for everyone, the whole of all the characters in the cast. And with its use of handheld cameras, off-camera sound, and fast-paced editing, Hill Street Blues set the look for dozens of shows which followed. And as I say, my own personal favourite was NYPD Blue, a darker and more adult version of Hill Street, starring Dennis Franz as the wonderful Andy Sipovitz. He was also, Dennis Franz was also in Hill Street, playing Norman Bunce, of course. So it's a sad farewell to one of the greats, and 2 things about it that stay with me are the legendary theme tune to Hill Street Blues, written by the great Mike Post. Da, da, da. Da, 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 da. And of course the cry that
I think we should have you humming our theme tune. We should end the episode on that.
Well, Eurovision's coming up, isn't it? And also the immortal lines of the sergeant talking to the policeman in blue before they went out was, hey, let's be careful out there. Stunning, legendary, Stephen Bochco, much missed, but he's left so much behind.
Yes, and those snippets there from The Guardian, which should say, just in case.
Yeah. Oh yes. Just
don't want to get sued.
Oh no, well, not again.
Not again. We haven't got any more money to give to The Guardian. I've been watching this week and the last couple of weeks actually. As I normally do, I'm always a little bit late watching these series because I'm not very very hip and with it. I've been watching a BBC series, Keeping Faith. Have you? Are you aware of it? It's very good.
No, I haven't. It's made by Welsh.
Yes.
BBC Wales. That's
set
right.
In Wales. All we know at the start is that a young family is kind of broken apart by the husband disappearing, and he leaves one morning for work. He's a solicitor. He and his wife are both solicitors at a family law firm, and he just doesn't come back, and from there things start to get unpicked. I won't spoil it, but it does go in a number of very surprising directions, things you didn't see coming when you think you're looking at a kind of a domestic psychological thriller, which you are, but you're also looking at some much darker stuff as well. It goes off in in some directions that weren't expected. That's what I was saying. It's very good. It's very good. It's,
well,
it's
excellent.
gripping.
I saw a piece the other day that they were hoping to make a second one. So if
really?
it's as successful as you make it sound, I'm sure they will, and I will be watching it shortly.
I'm enjoying it. I think I've got 2 more episodes to go, so hopefully by about October I should have managed to watch those as well.
Well, that's great, and I've just remembered something actually. Years ago, I was working with an American actor called Charlie Haid, who, for lovers of
Where's
Hill Street
my
Blues-
name drop alert button gone?
The beep 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 beep. It's an occupational hazard. And he played Officer Renko in Hill Street Blues, and the series had been finished for a few years. And I can remember asking him, well, what was it like, and he said it was the most extraordinary, intense, concentrated, brilliantly written, hopeful project that he'd ever worked on, which I think is a great tribute to the series, and again to Steve Bochco.
Absolutely. Now, this week's guests on the podcast, I say guests, even though if you didn't know, you might think it was just one. It's RC Bridgestock, 2 guests in one, the husband and wife team, Borrell and Cab, I was going to call
Borrell and Cab, little and large, Cannon and Ball.
Carol and Bob Bridgestock, who write as RC Bridgestock. They're the authors of the best-selling D.I. Jack Dillon books and advisors on the TV programmes Happy Valley, which is on Netflix, I believe, now, and Scott and Bailey, and the books of which are written by Kath Staincliffe, who was a previous guest on the show. So that's a great interview. Stay listening for that. But first, if you want to get in contact with the show to suggest a future guest or just to tell us how wonderful we are, you can email. You're laughing at. You can email hello@partnersincrime.online. We're on Twitter @CrimeFicPodcast. Facebook.com/Partners in Crime Podcast, or our website is partnersincrime.online. I should mention at this point that this podcast is very, very gratefully sponsored by Kobo, who have more than 5 million ebook and audiobook titles available on their website. You don't need an e-reader or a special device to read the books from Kobo either. You can read on your mobile phone, on your tablet, whatever you're listening to this podcast on. And the very kind folks at Kobo are giving you 90% off of your first ebook at Kobo if you go to their website, kobo.com, select your book and enter the promo code CRIME at the checkout. But don't do that just yet, because we think we might have some books that you might want to use your promo code on after we listen to the interview with RC Bridgestock. Carol and Bob Bridgestock were both born and lived in West Yorkshire until they relocated to the Isle of Wight in 2003. Between them, they have 47 years' employment with the police, Carol being a member of the civilian support staff and Bob being a police officer. Now, they never had any inclinations to become authors, but others found their verbal stories thrilling, which led them to put pen to paper. The rest, as they say, is history. The D.I. Dillon books have gone on to become some of the most popular British crime novels in recent years, with Bob and Carol also working on 2 award-winning police series for ITV and the BBC. Carol, Bob, welcome to the show.
Hiya.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for contacting us.
No, that's absolutely, it's a pleasure. Now, we had Felix Francis on the show last week, and he spoke to us about his father Dick and his mother Mary, who are not only a married couple but also a writing partnership on the Dick Francis books. And it's something I've got a lot of experience with too, as my wife runs my office and handles all the marketing and back office stuff for my books. But so I wondered, have you found separating your work life from your home life difficult?
Yes, in a word. I mean,
I thought that might be the case from personal experience.
Yeah, like we do, it becomes addictive. You can't suddenly just sit down and write a chapter. You need time to relax, and there's also always interference from the outside. And even when we do get our days right, Carol and I sit separate. Although we both work from home, we both have our individual offices, and we speak when we feel ready or we get hungry or whatever. The coffee stops flowing, but
behind a good man is also a good woman, Adam.
Yes, absolutely.
You can't see the face. I'm pulling it.
Well, it's funny with Felix. It's Bob here, by the way. Hello, both. How are you? All right.
Hello, Bob. Lovely to speak to you.
Hi, Bob.
And you. Felix said something very interesting. Talking about his parents. He said his father was the ideas man, and his mother was the wordsmith. Do you have your particular disciplines and particular areas of expertise in your writing partnership?
Yeah, that's exactly how it works with us, Bob. Bob actually goes back to the crime days, if you like, when he was actually there, at the scene, and he starts the book as he would really writing a crime file. As you probably, or you might not know, is a crime file. The last one he dealt with was actually 2 transit vans full. So you can imagine how big a crime file is. And he writes it right from finding the body to actually catching the perpetrator.
And then she changes it all.
Artistic license.
Exactly. But no, I mean, it's great to be able to use experience, police procedure we're known for, and it's got to be accurate. We still do research, of course, which you've got to, because things change, technology improves continuously. And people that follow us, police officers, ex-police officers, if we got it wrong, they would never let us rest. So it's important of that side. But yeah, the ideas come from experience, connect it to other little things that might just trigger something. And I'll maybe start off and I write on block where Carol needs to write daily. I can go on block and not write for 2 or 3 days. I may, I'm not saying in 3 days, but over a period of time, I might be 50,000, 60,000 words in, which then I think, right, I don't need to worry about that. Carol takes over.
And it gives it to me, and then I write a story around it. So basically, I give as in a real police officer's career, he doesn't get to know the victims personally. Obviously, it's the victim's family that he deals with, and the perpetrator. So from Bob's point of view, it clouds the issue if he gets involved in the killer's mind, if you like, and the victim's mind. So I create that person, if you like, who's going to be killed.
Well, that's interesting, because reading your books, I'm a big fan, as you know, of the D.I. Jack Dillon series. There is that wonderful blend of absolute authenticity, rigorous authenticity, and there's that emotional thing that comes into the characters you portray, both the protagonists and the victims of and the families involved. So are you more to do with the heart of the issue, Carol, would you say, in that respect?
Yeah, when Bob actually first penned the skeleton for Deadly Focus, he was very much hiding behind the mask of the detective. As he was actually writing that crime file, if you like, it was very much, I got all the form filling and, because he had to be police procedure, he had to go through every step of the way to actually get it down. Because our background isn't writing, and therefore he hid a lot of the emotion. And when I read it, it was like, well, this is like a crime file, but how do you really feel? And Bob actually said to me, I can't express how I feel because I have to hide behind that mask. And I think a lot of emergency personnel, they have a job to do. They go ahead and they do it, and that form filling eases their job, really, because it gives them a focus. And so it took me probably, the End of Consequences, White Lilies, before Bob actually opened up to me and he told me exactly how he felt. So I think as you read through the books, you probably do get to feel more of the depth of feeling from the officer that you didn't probably feel at the beginning.
I once was interviewed by a TV producer who said, you do realise you suffer from post-traumatic stress, don't you? And I said, well, I probably do, along with a lot of other things. But, you sort of push it to a side. But in reality, when you think back in the cold light of day, to be able to sit down and go back to an incident. And, of course, we change every little bit of it in detail so that it never relates to you're never going to upset anybody personally. But to actually look at the things you've seen and done, and the sadness of it all, in the cold light of day, in the safety of your home, with no pressure from the media, your bosses, etc., it's different. And like Carol said, I think over time, somebody once said to us, well, you started off as writers, but now you're authors. You've improved so much. And I think they're probably right that we've got into that system And instead of just unburdening, what we did and this is how you do it kind of thing, we've got into the more storytelling. And I think Sally Wainwright, when we did Happy Valley, paid us a good compliment. She says, "Thank God I found a police officer that understands drama." And for us, that we now understand where we're at. And I think, like Carol says, Unmask the Detective, it's cathartic. It has been. Now it's writing. I think the cathartic side of it's probably not there. Although sometimes you do get choked a little bit when you type in something where watching an horrendous scene. Like you say, anybody in the emergency services or the forces that's seen horrific things and then had to deal with it personally and then go home and try to shed it. When you revisit it years later, you still have that emotion.
Well,
I think sorry, Bob.
No,
I think one of the things for me is, as a family, Bob would go and deal with a murder. He might go and deal with, overnight. He might go out and help somebody down off talk somebody down off a bridge, or with knives or with guns or whatever. And then in the morning, and this could be Christmas morning, he would wake up and come home, and he had then to switch a switch and be happy. And, I read something the other day, which an officer had actually put on Twitter, and he'd said he'd been to see two families and given them the worst news that they never would want to get, ever. And he said, and I've had to come home to a birthday party, and I just cried because I understood more, because Bob has been able to unburden that I don't think a lot of families would understand. So it's brought us a lot closer together, in that respect.
It must have, it's so profound, that sort of professionalism that you have to show as an officer, the police force, a first responder in any of the services, to some, if you're a paramedic or working at A&E or whatever. I mean, the things that you must feel, and as you say, post-traumatic stress is a very real issue for people working in your profession, as was, and in other areas. So, I mean, dealing with that is extraordinary, but you managed to actually do it and filter that through into your writing, which is, as I say, was one of the wonderful things about your books. And that has blended. Do you feel that your responses, your understanding of Bob's work, Carol, and dealing with that post-traumatic stress and all of his experiences, and you're bringing your particular qualities to the writing, have over 8 terrific books now, have blended together so that your writing is less apart and more merged when you actually work together?
Yeah, I mean, we've obviously being a partnership to us helps us, because we trust we have that, and I'm sure that works with you as well, and with Adam and his wife, because you trust each other. Bob will write the story, and then his patience is like zilch. He'll pass it to me, and it's like, I've done my bit now. That's it. Yeah. And so he gives it to me, but he trusts me to do that now. So that's a big thing for a writer. And I guess a lot of writers who write on their own are very precious about the work, and I think we're not, because we share, and that helps us with the screenwriting, and helps us when we advise people as well, because we're not precious about what we do. What we do is we just give you our side of it and tell you what we would do, and how it does really work. And then it's up to the screenwriter or the author or anybody that we advise to take from that. But we're not precious about it. We don't feel...
We finish each other's sentences.
I mean, just to put things into perspective, I mean, for listeners worldwide who don't know this, Bob, I mean, you're a highly commended career detective for 30 years and retiring at the rank of detective superintendent, and during just the last 3 years of your time with the force in Yorkshire, you took charge of 26 murders, 23 major incidents, over 50 suspicious deaths, and numerous sexual assaults. I mean, the statistics on that in just 3 years are immense. So it's little wonder that you now, as writers, the two of you, bringing your experience and your talents together, are very much in demand. not only for your books, but also for your expertise on television programmes. And you've had a huge success with 2 major series. One, obviously, the BBC's BAFTA award-winning Happy Valley, and also the Scott and Bailey series for ITV. How did you get involved in the TV side of things?
It was unusual, really, because there was a reporter in Halifax, and she was doing an article on us about our writing, and she'd just interviewed Sally Wainwright, and she basically said, "You should speak to Sally." And I said, "Well, we don't know her, but if Sally wishes to speak to us, then obviously we'll meet." And we got a phone call, would you believe, back on the Isle of Wight. Hello, this is Sally Wainwright. Right. I think it's a cold call. No. But joking apart, within a short space of time, Carol and I travelled north to Manchester, sat with Sally. She had the remit of doing a Juliet Bravo, but not
modern day.
And she wanted a woman sergeant. Could we help? Would we help? And the 3 of us sat down, and using all the scenarios that I'd actually dealt with, even the name of Happy Valley was what we called Calder Valley as police officers many years ago. We were able, between the 3 of us there, to actually come up with the storyline, which was fantastic. And from our point of view, it was about showing it as it is. It's painful, it's hurtful, it isn't easy, but we all do it and show it as it is. So that was something. And at the end of that, Sally said, "Well, I've got all the scripts for every episode in the can before we start filming. I've never ever done that before."
And she actually sent us a message saying, "I couldn't have done it without you," which for us was fantastic.
And it's not just the scenarios; it was the dialogue as well. So we were very involved in the dialogue, because in any service, as you mentioned there, any trauma, there's that dark side of humour. And if you didn't have it, I think people would collapse. There's things happen that if you didn't laugh, you'd cry. And something you said earlier, Bob, was about, you've got to be professional, and being the man in charge, even more so, I found, because people look at you for that guidance, or look for your reaction. And if you give the wrong one, they copy you. I mean, it sounds strange, it does. And all the events, in amongst all those events, would you believe I was an on-call negotiator for extortion, suicide intervention, terrorism, and kidnap. So, and I mean, I got called out a few times. The only reason I know that is because one of the added things that they used to do in the police, they right, we want to know what your performance is over a month, so we need monthly returns. just read a newspaper, you'll see what's happening. But no, it is something that's how it started. That's how we met quite a few times.
Yeah, I think from it's just everything that's happened since we've left the police force has been very much serendipity, and anybody who knows us, and you've met us, Bob, so anybody sort of says to us, "Do you fancy doing this?" And we're like, "Yeah, well, one thing that it's actually taught us, being in the police force, is life's for living, and you can sit down and you can, look back, but you've always got to look forward, always, because you never know."
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, that comes across in both those series that you've worked on. I mean, there is the sheer professionalism of the police officers involved, and the professionalism and authenticity of the investigations. But on both Happy Valley and Scott and Bailey, there are the repercussions shown in the domestic and personal side of the police officers' lives. So, I mean, it's no surprising that, based on what we've just been talking about, that the 2 television shows that you're associated with also share similar qualities to the way you write your books as well.
And the realism as well. And that's something that strikes me. It must be so encouraging for you guys to see that you can have that almost absolute realism while still keeping the series entertaining and engaging. That's something that Peter James was speaking to us about when he was on the show a few weeks ago. The fact that you can have this absolute realism and still be engaging and entertaining. It doesn't always have to be that story wins out.
No, and when you speak to, like I say, we've got a massive following from police officers and other emergency services. We've had nurses write to us and said, I've been sat here crying. You've just said it how I could never express what happens at the hospital. When a body's brought in or a person, and especially when we did the piece about Maisie being in hospital and we nearly lost her. That type of thing. And we've always drawn off our experiences to put that, or I do, and I definitely draw off my experiences to put that heart into it.
But you've got to have humour, you've got to entertain. If it's too dark, people would switch off and think, oh gosh, I don't even turn that next page, that's bad enough, I don't want to know.
And Sally's great at that. I mean, Sally's one of the best, isn't she?
She's a great writer.
And she does the thing that I like about us. Recently we've been involved with different writers, and the great thing is they want to do it as real as they can, because when we've spoke to, like I said, police officers and nurses, etc., one of the things they say is, it's good to see it how it is. The police officer isn't always a druggie or, addicted to drink or cigarettes. They do have home lives.
Yeah, they give them up eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that thing, Bob, that it's humanising. Look, your emergency service people, your armed forces people, military, etc., they are all usually family men doing a difficult job. And
women.
And women, yeah, of course, Carol. But you come home to this home life environment, and what we tried to do in the books to try to show and humanise this person who was dealing with all this, that really is a bit like Mr. Ben when he goes into the shop or he goes to work, you throw a switch and he's working.
And one of the things we had to do with the family as well, we tried to put into the books how the family dealt with it. And one of our daughters, because obviously Bob didn't wear a uniform, she didn't actually link that he was a policeman, She knew he went to work in a suit, she knew he locked baddies up, that type of thing. But 6-year-old, she was very... And she got really upset and she was going really, introverted. And we were like, what's the matter? And eventually we got out of her that all she saw at this particular time was Bob on the television looking cross. And of course you can't go on the television and go, hi, there's been a murder. Hello, Jenny.
I think that came out, didn't it? That, one of her friends had been on a wave tour. She'd been on breakfast TV, and a mum had waved to her children at home, sort of thing. She said, "You never wave." And I said, "You can just in a high-profile murder case, just stopping, saying, just hang on, can I just wave at home, saying, oh, happy birthday, Dad," or whatever, That do it. Right?
She got really, really, really upset. And so we had Bob devised this thing where he touched his tie before he actually started to speak. So if you actually look at any of the press conferences, anything, if he's on television, he touches his tie.
Straighten the knot on the tie, collar. That's a signal to
What
him.
a great code. I'll be looking
that was
out
saying
for that.
hello to the daughter. Wow.
It's saying, I love you, I'm okay, because obviously she was worried sometimes because he was also associated with the bad things, so there'd be a shooting and then all of a sudden it'd come in and somebody said, why do you actually let them watch the news or read the newspapers? And you're like, how can you?
You can't, or somebody else will tell them and then they'll watch it. And nowadays, technology can watch. But I think for me as well, it's the calming side of it, and you're in control. You're in control of the press conference. You're sat with somebody that's lost their nearest in the worst possible circumstances. I've held people's hands in press conferences, and you can feel them shaking. And sometimes how my voice never shook, I'll never know. But it's keeping that, that straight face, because the murderers watch to see who's going to be chasing them. And they tell you afterwards, well, as soon as I knew it was you, I had to get out of here, And you think, well, why didn't you just come to the station? You'd have made life so much easier. I always wanted to have one of these murders where you go and you've got somebody there that said, I've done it, here I am, and there's the knife that I did it with, or something like this. I remember years ago somebody bringing his wife to the police station in the boot of the car saying, look, I brought her in, I've killed her, we had an argument, I've killed her, I'm sorry, but he's so busy, I thought I'd save you some time. And you think, that's very, very kind of you, but...
That'd make for a dreadful book, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good short story, though.
You're doing something right where the chief constable actually follows you on Twitter. So your procedure's quite right. But it's about, we're never negative. We're never negative about anything. We're never negative about the police service. We still get asked regular on radio to comment on, if the likes when Ian Brady died, when Ronnie Briggs died, Roger Black and people like this died. Robert Black, should I say, died. So we're still
not the athlete.
Not the athlete, no. Sorry, Roger. But I mean, it's that kind of thing. We're still involved with the media side of things.
Well, your positivity actually straddles or goes further than that even. I mean, because I know that from your position as best-selling authors and expert consultants on crime, you've also, as I say, sent the lift down to other generations and set up a writing competition, which is it still going? I believe it is, and
it is, yeah,
and very, very successfully. Who was inspired to do that, and do you enjoy it?
Yeah, that was me. Bob's quite happy to just trundle on and do the consulting.
I think she thinks we're not busy enough, so we should do something else. But
so one of my big things, Bob, is and I did it in the police force. We did a drawing competition for the very youngsters on a job, a big sort of thing that Bob did called Autumn Fall. And that was really popular. And we're going back now to the 80s. Really popular. And we got some good prizes, because that's the key to getting people involved, is the prizes, obviously. And so that was really successful. And I got a commendation for that, which Bob's got all these around the office that I'm looking at the moment, and I've got one. I'm very proud, because it came from the chief constable.
It's got pride of place. There's a light above that one. The rest is the dull background.
But then, so when we went to the Isle of Wight, one of the big things for me is we're very, very lucky to have what we have. So extremely lucky to be alive. So, everything. I'm just so grateful for everything. And so when we'd actually started writing, I realised how hard it was for young authors and even fledgling authors to actually get accepted into the writing world. We were looked down on. It was very much, you've only wrote one book,
Yes.
Very difficult.
Very difficult, and you've never been, you've no accolades. You've never been to university, and you're writing, and we were really looked down on it. It was like, no, this is not right. So we weren't able to join the writing circle down on the Isle of Wight because it was too highfalutin, basically. So we did our own, and that's still going now. So 10 years later,
and they've had some great success.
They have, yeah. We've got 3 or 4 authors that have been published from that writing. But
we're going to schools, we're going to colleges. We've got our own RC Bridgestock trophies that we buy to present to the outstanding one. It's a bit like an Oscar, but a very, very cheap version. I hasten to add, but it's just to encourage, and it's not that. It's to show background and to what they write, and to just encourage them to do it. And we're patrons for quite a lot, and ambassadors for charities.
I know the work you do is quite phenomenal.
The books raise money, which is absolutely fabulous. So we like to give something back. And
the charity that the actual competition that you're talking about, it's now raised in the region of £10,000 on the Isle of Wight for different charities.
And is it just for writers on the Isle of Wight, or is it a nationwide competition?
Yeah, no. What we did, we specifically, and I'd love to do this in Yorkshire, and I can see Bob but what we specifically did
if you can hear us stop breathing in a minute, it's my hands are just about to reach towards it.
The thing is, if it's a regional thing, and I would like other areas to actually take it up, because it's a regional thing, you get a lot more people actually involved, because they think they've got a lot better chance of winning. So I know that's not always the case, because on a national competition you might only have a few. I mean, the Crime Writers Association, the year before we did it, had a handful of young entries. We had 56 for our first competition. And what we did was we basically did it on the island, and we had a ceremony at the end. And we did it close to Christmas, so we could give the winners presents. And we got 24 prizes, which is obviously better than just having a £1 or a one. People have got more chance of winning.
Yes.
And so this we've done it for different charities. Since we've left, the Isle of Wight Society for the Blind has actually taken it on, and we're still very much involved. But they're continuing to do it on the Isle of Wight, and that's why I'd like to do it in different regions, but do it as a regional thing rather than a national thing, because I think we'd get more people involved.
And just on, sorry, Bob, but I'm just on the back of that as well. The books themselves, because we do charity, work with charities, and what can you offer as a signed copy? Apart from that, it's people bid, and we started quite some years ago now with people saying, "I'd like to be in your book. Can I be a character?" And
that was usually policemen.
Yeah, usually policemen. To say, "I know what that is. That's me, isn't it?" And we said, "No, it isn't. It'll never be you. You were never that good." But the thing about that, like the last book, it meant £5,000 for one charity of people bidding just to be named people in it. And people say, "Gosh, how do you do that?" I said, "Well, it's easy making a name sometimes, because Carol only changes them. And if somebody's actually paid a charity, then we're not going to change that name." And it's that kind of thing. So the competitions, the charities, it's the community involvement, but it's pushing forward, encouraging people, because if somebody hadn't said to us, "You should write a book," we probably never would have. And that was a result of going to an hospice
to do a
talk to the volunteers, where somebody kept pestering, saying, "Look, come and tell us what's the man in charge. You must have some horrific stories and some really funny stories to tell. Come and talk to us." And it did. And afterwards they said, "You should write a book." And like I said to somebody only the other day, when we went to night class to learn how to write, 2 hours a week on a Monday night, and I thought when I first turned up, I'd gone to the foreign language class, because talking about protagonists, genres, and things like this, and I just realised very quickly that there was a big steep learning curve here. And every day of life we learn something new, and I think as authors you learn something new, or you research takes you into that area where you think, "I didn't know that." So I mean, we pass on, or we like to think we pass on, and educate people about policing. What is the technology? What is DNA? What can you get fingerprints from? What can't you do?
And if we can do it, other people can do it as well.
Well, what you do is you take your success as writers and people, and you give something back to the community, which I think is a wonderful thing. And not only that, you're quite very inspiring speakers for people who if you in your area, if you have a literary festival and you see RC Bridgestock turning up, Bob and Carol turning up, go and see it, because you are both
a sort of writer who doesn't have children knocking around.
You give the most wonderful sessions. Very often you can go to, not very often, but occasionally you can go to literary festivals, and they can be quite dry affairs. Or
why are you looking at me when you say that?
No, and whatever. Well, I can tell you, anyone who goes to see one of your talks or sessions will walk away feeling not only inspired in certain areas, but I'm not surprised that you're running a writing course, because I would want to write after listening to you guys. I really would.
How did you get on?
Now, which brings us rather neatly to number 8 in your D.I. Jack Dylan series, When a Killer Strikes. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Hesitation, repetition, or deviation?
I will tell the listeners why they should go out and buy it immediately, or indeed buy all 8 of your books. Start at the beginning and follow the whole wonderful series. When a Killer Strikes. Tell us about that.
That came about, and we all know murder over the years. It seems to become a commonplace thing that every time you pick up the paper, every time there's a murder. And I think back, and it used to be a rarity, and it still shook a community. Now, people used to say, "Oh, it never happens here." It does. And I think most people now know somebody or some area where they've lived where this has happened. So we decided, or my take on this one to start with was, when a killer strikes, what happens? How does it unfold? And what effect does it have on the community and the people involved? Because people do get, well, I don't want to spoil the plot too much, but people do get interviewed, arrested. It's not them. And some people, the last thing you want to do is give somebody the wrong label. And it's a close-knit thing. So when a killer strikes is about a murder occurs, and what does it have, not just on the family, the devastation on that, and not just the police officers, but what about, it sounds awful, but residual community? And we all have a thirst that, as well as readers, there's such a thirst for crime. If crime isn't on the menu, people don't want to know anymore. So it was a case of, look, you've sensed it in the media. What really happens, and is this how it would?
And from a police procedural point of view, you go with Jack Dillon obviously to the murders. You go to the mortuary with him. You go to the family. We take you through right from the very start when the body's found. We take you through right to the end and catching the perpetrator and some of the things that happen in the meantime. And we also do. He's not just the only person. We have a team of people. That and a team of characters that are all there together, and they're all helping each other. And from the home life side, I hope that I've actually come full circle with the home life side, because we started at the very beginning knowing only Jack Dillon, and not spoiling it for our readers, but we might actually be writing a prequel. So we start at the beginning. We don't know anything about Jack Dillon. We don't know about his background in all the books. You know Jack Dillon and his family now, but you don't know about his past. And so I've hopefully sort of gone the full circle. We've got the full arc, and we brought Jack Dillon back to his first home, and him finding out about his father's past as well.
But it's an whodunit. Sometimes I was a straight procedural. Who's done it from chapter one, because we tell you.
Yeah.
And people say, well, you tell us who it is, but then you tell us how you get there.
Yeah.
So this one was, it's an whodunit.
It's an whodunit.
And the reason for that is that in reality, as a police officer, people that come up to me in Carlo when I was in Chadman, have you locked boyfriend up yet? It's Dad that's done it. You can tell. Them tears were crocodile tears. He was what the, oh, come on, Bob, what are you messing about? Haven't you locked him up yet? You couldn't go anywhere socially.
Everyone's an expert.
So what we're trying to bring to the table in that one is that, don't wear blinkers. Sometimes you're right, and it's obvious, it's in front of you, but there's no evidence. Other times you're wrong, and you can go down a road. And one of the things, as a person in charge of murder inquiry, you have to make decisions. There's no good sitting on the fence. You make decisions. If you get the right decisions, people go with you. If you make the wrong decisions, the media will tear you to pieces. So will the hierarchy in the police service. And what people may not realise is the man in charge, or the woman in charge, as a senior investigating officer, you have the responsibility of investigating that murder. The total responsibility. It's your decision. It's not the pathologist. It's not the CSI as we see in America. It's not the district attorney and things like this. It's you. So every decision you make needs to be made and needs to be positive for the team. But like you say, you've read it. You never assume anything. Let the evidence speak, and that's what we try to portray in this, when a killer strikes. It's that kind of thing.
Well, we shall tell all of our listeners to go out and buy that book, because it does sound fascinating. I'm going to be the first in the queue. Listen, Carol and Bob, thank you so much for speaking to us today. It's been absolutely fascinating.
What a pleasure. It's lovely to see you, and I hope to see you very soon.
Yeah, we'll have to do a board sometime all together. That'd be fun.
And it's good to hear you're happily settled back up north.
Yeah, we are.
I've shoveled enough snow now.
All the best to you both. Take care.
Back to sharpening the pencil. Nice to speak to you both.
Now, all of Bob and Carol's books, RC Bridgestock's books, are available on Kobo, so why not give them a go? You don't need an e-reader or a special device. You can read the books on whichever device you like, really, and whatever you're listening to this podcast on, in fact, a mobile phone or a tablet or a computer. Of course, there are e-reader devices from Kobo, which are fantastic if you want to get one of those as well. But you can get 90% off of an RC Bridgestock book by going to kobo.com, and if it's your first purchase, enter the promo code CRIME at the checkout, and the very kind people at Kobo will knock 90% off of that purchase price for you. Another great interview, Bob.
Well, what a great couple! I mean,
Yes.
they really are, and to meet them in real life is great too. I mean, they're just such good communicators, and such fun to be with, and of course, both steeped in huge experience. I mean, they write their books, steeped in great authenticity, as we said in the interview, and they communicate their passion for what they do, but they communicate so many other things as well. And as we said in the interview, they help so many other people. It's not just about them writing and selling books and telling stories. Their influence spreads out.
And genuinely lovely
well.
people as well.
Yes, they really are. So, as I said, quite genuinely
Yes.
in the interview, if you see their name pop up at your local literary festival or any festival up and down the country or worldwide, go and see them. They're an absolute must-buy ticket at any festival.
Yeah, two of my favourite people in crime, I think.
Yes.
Definitely. If you have any guests that you want to hear on future shows, any suggestions, then do get in touch. We do read all of the suggestions, and in fact, a good number of our guests have been people that have been suggested by listeners. So by all means, send your suggestions in, and we'll try our level best to get them on the show. You can email hello@partnersincrime.online. You can get us on Twitter @CrimeFic Podcast. We're on Facebook. Facebook.com/Partners in Crime Podcast. Next week we're off to Books by the Beach in Scarborough.
We certainly are.
Well, I'm not going up until towards the end of the week, so next week's episode won't be a report from Books on the Beach, Books by the Beach even, but hopefully in a couple of weeks' time. We'll have an episode which will be an exclusive.
I'm looking forward to going back. I spent 8 years working in Scarborough and had a lovely time there. So,
were you doing the donkey rides on the beach?
I was. Oh, you've got to earn your money where you can.
Absolutely.
You really have. And so, hopefully, we'll be up there and taking the family as well and revisiting old haunts. It's a fantastic festival. I mean, they've got some extraordinary, wonderful writers. So look it up. Books by the Beach in Scarborough. And come along if you've got a spare bit of time. It starts on the Thursday, goes through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm turning up to do a little thing on the Sunday with Hugh Fraser and George Costigan, who was in the first series of Happy Valley. Some of you may recall, who's written a wonderful novel too. And Adam will be there making a nuisance of himself as
mostly in the pub. I've not been asked to speak, you see. Yes, we're hoping to record a whole episode from Books by the Beach. We've done a Granite Noir special on the Peter James episode where you went up there and we had a bit of a snippet, a bit of a double header there. But we're actually hoping to, technical hitches aside, record the whole episode from Scarborough, which will be our first full outside broadcast.
Murder, skullduggery and candy floss.
Oh yes, I can't wait.
Partners in Crime was presented by Adam Croft and Robert Dawes and produced by Adam Croft. The theme tune was by the Caesareans. The Partners in Crime logo and imagery were designed by Stuart Bache. Partners in Crime is sponsored by Kobo, your favourite local bookshop, perfected.